Thank you, Todd. And hello, everyone. Welcome to Engage. As we just said in our video, great customer connections matter. I think all of you are looking to build great customer connections with your customers. We are very privileged to have you all here. This is our way of connecting with our customers, our partners. So thank you all for being here, and I'm excited to kickstart Engage. So today we are going to be talking a lot about marketing in the age of data and AI. Obviously, we're talking about data and AI, but great marketing is not possible without the people. So take a look around you. Take a look at this community, which I think is very, very strong, has some of the best people in the world of data and AI marketing. And give yourself a big round of applause. So I think let's kind of celebrate the fact that we are gathered here and bring the best of the people here. So thanks to you, I think thanks to this great community, we've been recognized by a lot of external parties. I think we're very, very thankful to all of our customers, all of our partners for making this happen, whether it's the Gartner recognition or Deloitte's recognition for fastest growth. Very, very excited. Could not have been possible without you, so thank you again. So today I want to, as I mentioned, we want to talk a lot about marketing in the age of data and AI. But before we do that, I want to take everyone back in time, because I think we'll be talking about a lot of shifts that are going on right now. And it's great to ground ourselves in some of the shifts that we have all experienced in the past. So many of you, hopefully none of you is too young to not remember this. I think most of you hopefully remembered this for the first time. And this is, for the first time, the world became digital, maybe roughly around 30 years ago, call it. And I think this idea that there is a browser which is kind of creating, access to open internet, connecting content, was very, very powerful paradigm shift at that point in time. And with that, I think marketing for the first time became interactive. You could have customers touch and feel marketing. Hopefully, these ads never show up in front of you anymore. But I think what started with this, which looked kind of silly, right? Like really, I think if you clicked on you landed on some really spammy kind of a landing page of sorts. So clearly nobody wants to celebrate this age in this form. But it led to bigger things down the road, right? So I think marketing suddenly became interactive. Before this, if you saw an ad on television, you saw a billboard, you saw a flyer coming to you in your mail, you could not touch it, you could not interact with it, and suddenly marketing kind of changed, right? And I think even though this particular ad seems annoying, but it led to great beginnings, and I think that's something to remember. And suddenly with that, everything became trackable, measurable, right? Because I think, again, in the age of the billboards, in the age of TV ads, you could not measure or interact with ads. So the gentleman who you see out here with the jar of cookies is literally the person who invented the idea of a web cookie. And this gentleman, Lou, he was not trying to build a tool for marketers. He was actually building something that could keep state on the web. And for the more technical, if you state kind of means, or less technical, I think let's kind of translate what he was trying to do is like things like shopping cart. You kind of abandoned it, you left something on the web. He was trying to say that here's where you were before. Let's actually have a cookie which kind of keeps track of that idea of state. But with everything great, marketers took advantage of that and made it their own thing. So it became like a very big, wave in marketing to kind of use the cookie to track people. And in some ways, I think the first digital wave was kind of born with this, right? And I think all of us here, in some form, are digital marketers. That may not be the entirety of who we are. I think, most of you here are creative marketers. You think of customers and all of that. But I think in some part, everyone here is a digital marketer. And I think that was a big paradigm shift, right? So I think it's very core to who we are. I think often we don't even think about this because it happened over the last 10, 20, 30 years. So it's not something you wake up and start thinking about every day. But it's good to kind of reflect on this because I think this wave is coming to an end in this form, right? So if you think about the digital wave, a lot of good things about it. Many of the good things will continue. But some things taken to extreme became annoying. I think everyone here has experienced those annoying ads that track you across the web and has figured out the frustration with some of the early things that were being done in digital. And I think this wave, obviously, a lot of good things will continue, but in the current form, in the way we have been thinking about it for the last 30 years, is coming to an end. And I think a new wave is going to get born, and I think it's important for this community, I think, because all of you are forward-thinking marketers, all of you are thinking about the customer experiences. Important for us to recognize that this moment is a big, big transition, it's a big paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift, in some ways, is being captured by all the excitement, all the changes happening with AI. I think many of you have been using AI in many, many ways over time. Specifically, over last year, the Gen AI paradigm has kind of been added into the AI mix, and that has opened up a lot more possibilities. But really take a moment to think about sort of how all of you use AI in your own personal life. So actually, maybe a quick show of hands. How many people, forget about the business use cases and marketing use cases, but how many of you are using AI in your day-to-day? I think literally almost 100%. I think there are a couple of people who we'll get them caught up onto this new wave, but looks like almost 100% kind of participation. So this wave is real, right? This is not like a fad. This is not some buzzword that someone invented. This is not sort of a fake trend where you get confused. This is very, very real. We have all embraced it in our personal lives. Our customers, our consumers, many of your consumer brands, your consumers have embraced it in their personal lives. So the idea that this will apply to marketing, this will apply to our work stuff is absolutely apparent and interesting. So what does it mean to be an AI marketer? What can you do with AI, right? And I think I'll tease out 3 ideas. I think we'll hear from a lot of practitioners today, a lot of thought leaders through the rest of the day today, and we'll understand how they're thinking about this. But just 3 quick ideas. I think number 1, I think like at the highest level, if you think about AI, what it does is unlocks the power of your customer data, right? So for many, many years, I think people have been collecting customer data in some form. We talked about, obviously, the cookie kind of data, but there's been richer data collected over time. But often, the amount of data is overwhelming and is not in a form that can be unlocked for personalization. And I think when we think about AI in its true form today, the biggest change that's coming is the idea that AI can unlock your customer data and make it truly actionable for one-to-one engagement. So let's see 3 ways in which that can be done. So the first way is pretty simple. I think you think about marketing, it's all about the right audience meets the right creative. Oftentimes, with customer data, people are slicing and dicing their audiences and going into segmentation. But oftentimes, the struggle was, how do you create the right content for the right customer, right? And everyone here has talked about the content bottleneck. If you think about, there are a lot of stats which highlight how marketers, even for coming up with a campaign, which is not even one-to-one personalized, but for a segment, it takes weeks to create the right piece of content. What if you could actually have an engine which generates the right kind of content, whether it's in the right tone, in the right, in the right language for the right segment, and you could do that at scale by combining that with your customer data and the customer understanding? That is a game changer for marketers. So you think about the right audience, which comes from the customer data, but then you're able to use that data to influence the right kind of content. And these are some simple examples. But over time, you can start imagining where this trend goes. You can imagine that every digital experience will be truly unique to you, right? Where you're actually, the brands who do it right, they will actually understand you as a consumer very, very deeply. And every interaction, whether it's a web page that's being served up, whether it's an email that's coming in, whether it's an ad that's being served out, all of those will be truly, truly personalized to you, not just at the audience level, but also at the content level, right? So this idea that customer data, content kind of coming together is a dream come true for marketers. So that's one thing we'll be hearing more from all of our speakers today. Great, great trend. The second thing I'm excited about is that you suddenly make every experience conversational. And what I mean by that, again, we are at the very early innings of doing this. But if you see sort of every experience, and I think every experience is not even digital experiences, you could imagine that today marketers are influencing their customers on not just digital touch points, but also on offline touch points where somebody might be calling in, or you might be calling out, or you might be meeting a person. And all of these touch points, oftentimes you just don't have an understanding of who is the customer, right? And what have they done? What are their interests? What are their intents? And how do you bring all of that together at a snapshot? Because if you're taking hundreds of calls, how do you sort of understand each and every person in a quick second? One of the early things that we have done is created like a profile summary APIs. You can actually generate icebreakers in Blueshift, which are generated off the profile. So you can actually have conversational prompts, which can come out and start talking to you. Again, very, very early innings. You can actually imagine these things being used in the call center. You can imagine chat experiences that are digital. Very exciting kind of development to start saying, how do you take all this data that you have collected over time, organized over time, how do you unlock it in an instant with AI, right? So in the instance that matter, suddenly that data gets unlocked. And then really the third thing I'm excited about is the idea that, again, staying with the idea of content meets customer data. How do you take this idea that you can drive outcomes, which could be commerce outcomes, which could be engagement outcomes, by combining content with other stuff? In this example, I think we'll hear more from the team at Sweetwater today, where you can actually imagine an experience where the customer is looking at a video content, which is about quiet practice tips and tools for bands and orchestra. And this is obviously a very simple example, but here you can start imagining that customer, based on an AI understanding of the contents of the video, would get recommended products which could be either around earplugs, right, like, again, silent practice, or it could be about like a silent guitar series and all of that, right? So again, like kind of this idea that content, commerce kind of come together, content and customer data kind of come together, and it's a very immersive experience, which is, in a more technical language, people are starting to call it multimodal, which just means, it can understand text, but it can understand video, it can understand all other forms of content. So again, as content scales, you can start understanding it deeply, you can connect it with customer data, you can produce great one-to-one recommendations which drive great outcomes, and we'll talk about some of those outcomes later today in the discussion, Sweetwater. So really, I think like if the genie is out of the bottle or Gen AI is out of the bottle, what are the 3 wishes you can make? I'll let all of you make your own personal list for this. But maybe a starting point for making that wish list could be to eliminate content bottlenecks. That's the easy part. You're starting to say, look, how do I create personalized content at scale? The next harder one would be to enable conversational experiences. You start thinking about how do you interact with each person in a conversational form? How do you actually write sentences rather than keywords? And how do you do this on both digital and offline channels? And the third thing is really about engaging with one-to-one recommendations, whether it's content, whether it's product, whether it's offers. So these are some starting points. I think like when we are talking 5 years from now, I'm pretty sure newer ideas will come into play. This is a pretty big paradigm shift. Everything will change. But these are just some starting points that we are starting to see, and I think there's a lot more to come. So how do you actually harness this stuff? I mean, is it just as simple as just querying OpenAI or ChatGPT or whatever that might be? Turns out it's not, because the examples you saw are all about customer data unlocking the power of AI, right? So how do you get started on that customer data journey? So I think the first thing is to recognize that your IP, your brand personality, all of that will be driven not just by this AI that's sitting outside of your brand, but it'll be about how you combine that AI with your customer data and your voice as a brand. So I think if you start realizing that, the first thing is obviously to realize that when we talk about customer data, it's way bigger than marketing data. Obviously, we're talking about using customer data for marketing. But the data that really matters is customer interactions with products, the customer interactions with their digital product. It might be data about customers calling into a call center. So it's truly the experience data across so many different functions. And we'll hear from some of you about how you think about organizing data from all the different customer journey touch points into true customer data rather than just marketing data, which could be email opens and clicks and things of that sort, which arguably doesn't tell you a lot about the customer. And I think that's the first big realization. So again, like we'll talk about later in the day, kind of how do you kind of organize that data by bringing data from be it data warehouses or CRM systems and so on, or in product data. And again, that realization is very, very important. But if you do that right, if you are able to organize that data and have a view of customers that is holistic, which spans beyond just marketing data, and you actually truly understand what the customer is interested in, once you start combining that unified data with AI, you can deliver some really cutting edge, really interesting use cases in the world of AI. And that's where I think a lot of the excitement will come from. So I think the AI wave is very interesting. But I think without first-party data and combining that AI and data, it'll be hard for brands to differentiate themselves. So today, a lot of what we'll be talking about is that combination of data and AI, that idea of like customer data and customer AI kind of coming together, that idea of like content, getting married into the experience. And that's what will make it truly exciting and unique. So when I think about all of that, I think the biggest thing I think about is like track less, personalize more. So this idea that we have to track every action of the users. In some ways, you're still collecting data. It's important, but it's less invasive, less intrusive. It's truly about the first-party data that's collected with trust and consent rather than trying to track somebody on a third-party site, for example. So much less tracking, but much more personalization. You're truly understanding who the person is. What are their interests? If you're a bank, you're starting to understand like what deposit products have you opened? Have you added more deposits to those products? Are you applying for a mortgage? If you're a media company, you're starting to really understand like what areas of content are people interested in? What are some adjacent areas? Or are people sharing some of that stuff? And really trying to understand very, very deeply the customer experience. And I think using that for personalization, less reliance on tracking, but starting to form those trusted connections and taking that to the next stage. So I think like this idea that data and AI obviously is ushering in my mind like a big new paradigm. I also want to talk about the things that are not changing. So I think things that are not changing are about the idea that everything has to be customer centric. So I think great marketing, obviously things like digital, things like AI, data are enablers. The reason we're all talking in this room with real people is that many of you have to take those ideas and actually think about how that applies in the world of customer centricity. So I think that has to be the key. We have to make sure we don't lose sight of all of that in this whole discussion. And as we sort of go through all the panels and all the discussions today, we'll be trying to bring it back all together to this idea of like customer centricity and how does data and AI help you achieve that. So in many ways, I think we talked about the previous wave, the big paradigm shift that happened many years ago. And all of you, I think, will probably acknowledge that it gave you superpowers, made marketers better, enabled them to do a lot more. Marketing functions actually grew over time. And I think that same thing has the potential to happen all over again, right? Where you can start thinking about, with more data, organized data, accessible data, and AI, you can actually do a lot more with marketing. And marketing can influence the entire customer journey rather than just a part of it. And that dramatic explosion is the big opportunity in front of us. And I think we should talk about today, like how do we harness that opportunity by bringing the human creativity, the right brain, with sort of all the stuff that's happening in the data and AI world, which is all the analytical stuff.